There remains debate about whether the origins of Australian football were embodied by an Indigenous pastime called Marn Grook. However, on balance, it is likely. Anecdotal accounts from the 1840s suggest that it was a game played with up to 50 players participating. To observers, there appeared to be less of a team objective and more an exhibition of skill and speed, and jumping over other players to catch a ball made of animal skin and filled with charcoal. Unfortunately, with the growing dispossession of land occupied by the many Indigenous nations, by the time historians of the day began researching the game, it was no longer played. On the 25th of May 2002, the Swans played Essendon in the first ever game for the Marn Grook Trophy at the Olympic Stadium at Homebush in front of over 54,000 people. The driving force in lifting the awareness of Marn Grook and establishing the term as a permanent part of the AFL season was then Swans CEO Kelvin Templeton. Kelvin was keen to lift the profile of games at the stadium. He had also been long committed to the club becoming more visibly supportive of the host of Indigenous champions that had played in red and white, and Indigenous players' contribution to the game in general. As a consequence, Kelvin recommended to the board the playing of an annual game versus Essendon at the stadium, with the winner holding the Marn Grook Trophy. It's important to make the point tonight, the Swans consider the Marn Grook game as its most important game of the home and away season. Today, Marn Grook is undoubtedly a far more well-known term than it was a decade and a half ago, when the first Marn Grook games was staged. For instance, we have the massively popular AFL show on NITV, called the Marn Grook Footy Show. And Marn Grook is the subject of a number of books, including Kick It To Me and Marn Grook, the long ago story of Aussie rules, both published in 2012. To promote the first game, there was an on-field performance by the Bangarra Dance Company and an auction of footballs painted by leading Indigenous artists at the Museum of Contemporary Art. And an Indigenous themed jumper has been created for each Marn Grook game. In 2014, Adam Goods' mother, Lisa Sansbury, designed the jumper for that year's game. In 2005, the AFL created Dreamtime at the G. This was a game to be played in perpetuity between Richmond and Essendon during the AFL's annual Indigenous Round. In 2007, the AFL instituted the Indigenous Round, which in 2016 was renamed the Sir Doug Nicholls Round. Dreamtime at the G has been highly successful, to the point that the Marn Grook's game status probably was for some years somewhat diminished. However, in recent years, the game has been embraced by the AFL as a major part of its Indigenous Round. We have strongly promoted to the AFL that the Marn Grook game should have the same status and level of promotion as the Dreamtime game. In 2016, nearly 10% of players in the AFL have an Indigenous heritage. Our club has produced a number of outstanding Indigenous players. Players who played between 1 and 372 games include Matthew and Robert Armat, Tony Armstrong, Fred Campbell.
Campbell's got it, left foot, goal!
Troy Cook, Reuben Cooper, Lance Franklin, Adam Goods, Lewis Jetta, Don Kiter, believed to be the first Indigenous player to represent the club in 1953. Jerry Kickett, Jamie Lawson, Michael O'Loughlin, Elgin Riley, Brian Stanislaus, Byron Sumner, Kevin Taylor, Alan Thorpe. In 2005, Adam Goods and Michael O'Loughlin were both selected in the Indigenous Team of the Century. In 2016, the club introduced the Goods-O'Loughlin Medal for the player judged to be best on ground in the annual Marn Grook game.